The Spartan way of life, Spartan conditions, Spartan resilience. We say it with respect and even a touch of envy. We picture unyielding warriors who knew no fear, slept on bare earth, and died on their feet. But here's the strange thing. We admire people who lived in constant terror of their own slaves, people who were ultimately defeated by a single lame man with an unorthodox military tactic, and from whom almost nothing remains. No palaces, no statues, no hoards of gold. Only legends and a few broken stones. How did it come to this? Let us find out. I want you to hold 4 riddles in your mind. They will stay with us all evening. First, is it true that the Spartans were invincible, or is this a myth they invented about themselves? Second, why did a state that banned luxury and gold end up being bought with Persian money? Third, what system of upbringing turned a 7-year-old boy into a killing machine? And why did that very system destroy Sparta 300 years later? And fourth, how did it happen that the only Greek city-state with no stone walls, relying solely on the courage of its citizens, was ultimately undone by precisely that? The absence of walls. That is what we will talk about how fear created the greatest war machine of the ancient world, how that machine defeated every enemy, and how it ground itself to dust. Picture the valley of the Eurotas River, a narrow, fertile strip of land, hemmed in by mountains on all sides. The nearest port is 50 kilometers away over mountain paths. There is no access to the sea. There is nowhere to expand, only north or west across the ridges, where other people live. People who have what you do not, better wheat fields. Sometime in the 8th century BC, the Spartan army crosses the mountain ridge of Taygetos. Below lies Messenia, a fat, wide plain, a true breadbasket. The Spartans look down at it and understand, this must be taken. The war will drag on for 20 years, but they will take it. To understand Sparta, you must understand this geographical trap. Their city stood in a valley that was easy to defend from outside enemies, but it could only expand in one direction, into Messenia. And by taking Messenia, they gained not just land. They gained a nightmare that would define their entire existence for 500 years. Before the Dorians arrived, this land was inhabited by Achaeans. The Spartans conquered them and turned them into helots, state slaves. Helots were not classical slaves in the sense we usually imagine. They were not bought and sold individually. They belonged not to a private master, but to the entire Spartan community. They lived on the land, worked it, and handed over a fixed share of the harvest to the Spartiates. The rest, in principle, they kept for themselves. So on one hand, they had some incentive to work. On the other, they remembered perfectly well that they had once been free. They hated their masters with a fury that only the memory of lost freedom can produce. And here begins the central Spartan terror. Let us simply look at the numbers. Fully enfranchised Spartiates, those with voting rights and a place in the battle line, numbered around 9,000 at their peak. Helots, up to 500,000. For every one Spartiate, there were 7, 10, or even more helots. What does that feel like? Imagine living in a house where for every member of your family, there are 10 people who hate you. They cook your food, tend your land, watch you eat what they have grown. You know they dream of slitting your throat. You wake in the night and grip your weapon. This is not paranoia. This is daily life. All of Sparta's military power was directed not outward, but inward, against its own slaves. Sparta was not a city of warriors, as people often say. Sparta was a city of wardens. Every Spartiate was a guard in a prison where the inmates outnumbered the guards 10 to 1. And those inmates did not live behind bars. They lived all around, in the fields that fed you. This fear gave birth to what were known as the Cryptaea, nocturnal punitive raids. Young Spartiates were sent out into the countryside with no food, carrying only a knife. By day they hid. By night they came out onto the roads and killed the strongest, most dangerous helots. This was not mere suppression. It was state terror built into the educational system, an annual licensed hunt of human beings, lawful and encouraged. Spartan authorities formally declared war on the helots every year so that killing a slave would not count as a religious crime. This was a ritual. Fear elevated to the level of law. The economy ran on helot labor. Land allotments, kleroi, were indivisible and non-transferable. The helot worked, the Spartiate fought. This freed citizens from the need to earn their bread. But it made them hostages of the system. To abolish slavery would destroy the economic foundation, to leave things as they were meant, living on a powder keg. Sparta chose to live on the keg, and for that purpose, it built a fortress around itself, not of stone, of people. When you live in a besieged fortress where the enemy is within, sooner or later you start building a fortress inside your own head. That is precisely what a man named Lycurgus set out to do. The 8th century BC. Sparta is on the verge of civil war. Two royal lineages are tearing at each other. The poor are fighting the rich. The helots are watching for an opening. And into this chaos steps a man of royal blood who had renounced power, traveled widely, observed how other states were run, Crete, Ionia, and according to legend, even Egypt, and returned with a complete system. A system designed to put an end to strife forever. And it did. For almost 400 years. Before announcing his laws, Lycurgus went to the Delphic oracle. The oracle was, essentially, the ancient world's living Google. When you needed to make a fateful decision, you did not go to a lawyer or an analyst, you went to the Pythia. The Pythia sat in the temple above a crack in the earth from which intoxicating vapors rose, chewed a laurel leaf, fell into a trance, and cried out something incoherent. Priests shaped this something into verse and handed it to you. Of course, the verses were phrased so that anything could turn out to be true, but the authority was absolute. The Pythia called Lycurgus more god than man and blessed his laws. That was enough. The laws, the great retra, were simple as a spear thrust. No loopholes, no exceptions. First, the land was redistributed equally among all citizens. Each received a kleros, indivisible and non-transferable. No one could buy up his neighbor's allotments. The rich would grow no richer, the poor no poorer. Equality at knife point. Second, iron coins were introduced as currency. Enormous, heavy, deliberately brittle. They were treated with vinegar specifically to make the iron useless for reworking, or so they could not be hoarded, hidden away, or used for bribery. Imagine being paid not in money, but in expired petrol vouchers accepted only in one district of the city. You cannot put them in a bank. You cannot spend them while traveling. Stealing and bribing with such a medium of exchange is pointless. Sparta deliberately dropped out of international trade. No merchant carried goods to a country where it was impossible to make a profit. Third, syssitia, mandatory communal meals. No one, including the kings, could eat at home. Groups of 15 gathered at a common table, and each had to contribute his share of food. The main dish was black broth, a stew of pig's blood, vinegar, and salt. Foreigners who tasted it recoiled. One Persian guest said that now he understood why Spartans parted with life so easily. The Spartans themselves ate the broth with relish, not because they were gourmets, simply because it was the taste of community, the taste of equality. Fourth, houses could only be built from timber and unfired brick. No marble columns, no carved friezes. Axe and saw were your architects, no luxury that might set you apart from your fellow citizens. As for governance, Lycurgus created a structure that balanced itself, or at least was supposed to. Two kings from two different clans, the Agiads and the Eurypontids. They commanded the army, but in peacetime, their authority was sharply curtailed. The Gerousia, a council of 28 elders over 60 years old, plus the two kings. These old men held enormous authority and drafted legislation. Then, the Apella, the popular assembly of all enfranchised citizens. They did not debate laws, they voted. They voted, by the way, by shouting, "Whoever yelled louder won," a perfect system if you cannot count. And finally, 5 ephors, annually elected magistrates who could try and remove from office even the kings. The ephors were something like a constitutional court with the right to arrest the head of state at any moment, a very Spartan kind of democracy. When his reforms were complete, Lycurgus made a move worthy of Greek tragedy. He extracted from the citizens a pledge to change nothing until his return. And he left. Forever. According to one account, he starved himself to death so that releasing the Spartans from their oath would be impossible. Brilliant or monstrous? In Sparta, these concepts always stood side by side. The laws were written. Now what was needed were people who believed in them enough to die for them. For that, it was necessary to take a 7-year-old boy and make him into something else. Sparta. The boy is 7 years old. This morning they will come and take him from his family forever. His mother sees him off. She does not cry. To cry is a disgrace for both of them. She hands him his shield and says the only words of farewell she will offer. With it or on it, come back with your shield, alive and victorious, or let yourself be carried home on it, dead. There is no third option. This is how the Agoge begins, the system of upbringing that people often call a school. But a school implies holidays and bells between classes. There were none of either here. This was a state barracks stretched across 13 years. Immediately after birth, an infant was examined by the elders. The healthy were kept. The weak and sickly, according to legend, were thrown into the gorge of Apothetai. So says the myth that has migrated from textbook to textbook for 2,500 years. Recent excavations at this gorge have found the bones of adults, not infants. Most likely, the bodies of executed criminals were thrown there. But what does it matter what the archaeologists found? The myth works. The myth creates an image, and the Spartans carefully maintained that image. At 7, boys were taken into Aegulae, units that became their new family. They received one cloak for the entire year, no shoes. They slept on mats of reed that they tore with their bare hands from the banks of the Eurotas. Food was deliberately scarce. If you want to eat, learn to find it. Theft was not merely permitted, it was encouraged. But if you were caught, you were beaten, not for stealing, for being clumsy enough to get caught. Sparta did not cultivate honesty. It cultivated professionals in stealth and survival. And here, the famous story of the boy and the fox cub. A boy stole a fox cub, but supervisors were coming toward him. He hid the animal under his cloak. The fox cub began gnawing at his stomach. The boy stood in silence. He made no sound, betrayed himself with not a single movement. He fell down dead. And this, in the Spartan view, was the ideal. Not the saving of life, not cleverness, but the capacity to endure unbearable pain and show it to no one. That is what they valued above life itself. From age 12, the cloak was taken away. Now, one himation in any frost, no blankets. Flogging at the altar of Artemis Orthia became a public spectacle. Youths were tied up and whipped until they bled. Spectators watched to see who would not cry out, who would lose consciousness before begging for mercy. And this was part of the upbringing, not a punishment. You must become accustomed to pain. Because in war, pain is simply the air you breathe. On a separate line, the Crypteia, which I have already mentioned. Killing helots was not cruelty. It was a homework assignment. Creep up at night, kill the strongest one, remain unseen. This trained composure, stealth, and a complete absence of pity. And here is something interesting. While boys were being turned into killing machines, their sisters and future wives lived a completely different life. By Greek standards, a remarkable one. In Athens, a girl was given in marriage at 12 or 14, often to a man twice her age. She sat in the women's quarters and did not appear on the street without an escort. In Sparta, no. Girls were not married off before 18, sometimes later. They ran, wrestled, threw the javelin, exercised alongside the young men. They were physically robust because it was believed that only a strong woman could give birth to a strong warrior. A Spartan queen responded to the reproach that Spartan women commanded their men with the famous retort, "We are the only ones who give birth to men." A grave marker in Sparta was permitted for only 2 categories of person, those who died in battle and those who died in childbirth. The death of a warrior and the death of a woman in labor were equated, because both were battles. Consider the following paradox. Sparta forbade its citizens from doing anything other than waging war. No trade, no craft, nothing but military affairs. And that is precisely what brought about its end. In the 7th century BC, there were 9,000 Spartiates. By the middle of the 4th century, around 1,000, and 100 years after that, 700. Why? Constant wars eliminated citizens. The closed system admitted no fresh blood. The iron laws of Lycurgus, designed to preserve a caste of equals, slowly but relentlessly shrank it. The machine was running. And then came the moment when this machine was set against the finest army in the world. The year 480 BC. The Persian king Xerxes, ruler of an empire stretching from the Indus to Egypt, stands on a hill and looks down. Before his army of 200,000 men, not a million, of course, as the Greeks claim, but 200,000 is still a cosmos, stands a handful of warriors, a few hundred. They are combing their hair and doing gymnastics. Xerxes cannot believe his eyes. Beside him stands Demaratus, a former Spartan king who was exiled and defected to the Persians. Xerxes asks, "What are they doing? Have they gone mad?" And Demaratus answers quietly, "They are preparing to die. Before a final battle, they always put themselves in order. King, you march against the bravest men of Hellas." Before we reach Thermopylae, let us quickly rewind. The Greco-Persian Wars did not begin in 480. In 490, the Athenians, without the Spartans, defeated a Persian force at Marathon. The Spartans were late. They were prevented by a religious festival. Yes, the same legendary invincible Sparta simply failed to arrive on time because it was waiting for ritual dances to conclude. The Spartan runner sent to summon help covered 240 kilometers in 2 days. But what did that matter? The battle had already been fought. Athens won on its own. The legend of the Marathon Run, by the way. Do you know it? A messenger ran from the battlefield to Athens, cried, "Rejoice, we have conquered," and fell dead. A beautiful legend. The real Spartan runner afterwards kept running errands. But back to Xerxes, he decided to avenge Marathon and conquer Greece once and for all. He ferried his army across the Hellespont on pontoon bridges. A storm tore those bridges apart. Xerxes, in his imperial wisdom, found the culprit, the sea. He ordered the sea to be given 300 lashes and had chains thrown into the water. The sea apparently understood. The storm subsided. The satraps breathed with relief. The King of Kings commands even the elements. The Delphic oracle, meanwhile, advised the Athenians to defend themselves with wooden walls. Themistocles, Athens' chief strategist, grasped the meaning. The wooden walls were ships. Athens built 200 triremes, narrow-oared vessels with a ram at the bow, and waited. Now, Thermopylae, a narrow pass between the mountains and the sea, 60 to 90 meters wide. A place where the Persians' numerical advantage counted for nothing. The Spartan king Leonidas brought 300 Spartiates, not more, not fewer. But not just any 300. He selected only those who had sons. These men were not going to battle. They were going to die. Their line must not be extinguished. With them were approximately 7,000 allied troops from other city-states. For 2 days, the Persians attacked in waves. The Immortals, Xerxes' elite guard, came straight on and fell back with the same losses every time. The Spartans used a tactic of feigned retreat. They turned and ran. The Persians gave chase and broke formation, and then the Spartans wheeled and cut down those pursuing them. War is not only courage, it is cold calculation as well. Everything was decided by betrayal. A local man, Ephialtes, showed the Persians a mountain path that went around the pass. Why did he do it? For money? Out of revenge? We do not know, but his name has been a byword ever since. Ephialtes means nightmare in Greek, and he truly became a nightmare for the Spartans. Leonidas understood that he was surrounded. He ordered the allies to withdraw. He himself, with the 300 Spartiates and a small additional force of Thebans and Thespians, remained to cover the retreat. They stood on a small hill. Their spears broke. They fought with swords. The swords dulled. They fought with hands, teeth, stones. Leonidas fell first. The Spartans fought over his body several times before they too fell. They died on their feet. Later, a stone was placed there with an epitaph by Simonides. "Go, tell the Spartans, stranger passing by, that here, obedient to their laws, we lie." This inscription stands to this day. There is no bombast about victory in it, only a duty fulfilled. And now, a story that often remains in the shadow of the legend of the 300, the one Spartiate sent back by Leonidas because of an eye disease. His name was Aristodemus. He returned to Sparta, and no one spoke to him. They would not give him fire from the common hearth. They passed him by as though he were a leper. They called him a coward. A year later, at the Battle of Plataea, he threw himself alone into the thickest of the fighting and died performing extraordinary feats of bravery. But the Spartans did not call him a hero. Their verdict was cold. He sought death, not victory. That is despair, not valor. Even death does not redeem everything if the motive is wrong. Xerxes lost. The naval battle of Salamis, where Athenian triremes lured the Persian fleet into the trap of a narrow strait and smashed it, was the turning point. Xerxes withdrew, leaving part of his army in Greece. In 479, at Plataea, 5,000 Spartiates and 35,000 Helots. Yes, Helots were taken into battle, completed the rout. The commander Pausanias, who led the Greeks, became the hero of all Hellas. And then, you know what happened to him? He put on Persian clothing, surrounded himself with luxury, began negotiations with the Persians, harboring plans whether to betray Greece or to make himself a Greco-Persian king. He was accused of treason. Pausanias took refuge in a temple, trusting in its sanctity. The ephors ordered the doors to be walled up. His own mother, according to tradition, laid the first stone. He died of starvation in a sacred place. The hero of Plataea, the savior of Greece, ended his life as a prisoner walled up alive. Persia is beaten. Sparta is at the height of its glory, and it is precisely here, at the very summit, that the descent begins, the 50 years following the Persian Wars. Athens is visibly becoming a maritime empire. It creates the Delian League, formally for protection against Persia, but in practice for collecting tribute from allies. That money builds the Parthenon, lays roads, creates a fleet. Markets overflow with books, olive oil, textiles. Philosophers argue in the streets. Democracy hums like a hive. And Sparta sits in its valley and watches and understands. That is what we will have to fight, not an army, an idea. In 431 BC, the Peloponnesian War began. It would last 27 years. This was not simply a war between two cities. It was a collision of two models of the world, a land power against a sea power, barrack socialism against commercial democracy, peasant warriors against naval adventurers, the strategy of land against the strategy of sea, a classic confrontation. Every summer, Sparta invaded Attica, burned fields and vineyards, trampled the harvest. Athens sheltered behind its walls and fed itself from the sea. It seemed this could go on forever, but in 429, plague came to Athens. It killed a third of the population, including Pericles himself, the leader of Athens. The Spartan army, encamped in the fields, did not fall ill. Fear of disease kept them from storming the city. The irony, the greatest Athenian strategist was felled not by a sword, but by a bacterium. But the real shock came in 425 on the island of Sphacteria. 120 Spartiates, cut off from the main force, surrendered as prisoners. Alive. With weapons in hand, yet they surrendered. All of Greece was stunned. Spartans do not surrender. That was an axiom. And yet here were 120 hoplites, the elite, raising their hands. Imagine today's headlines. Elite special forces capitulate in full. It was a devastating blow to Sparta's prestige. The war brought out unexpected talents. The Spartan commander Brasidas was an unusual Spartiate. He could speak, persuade. He went north and liberated cities from Athenian dominion with words as much as with a sword. He promised freedom, protection, justice, and people opened their gates. He died at Amphipolis. With him, Sparta lost the man who might have offered an alternative to brute force. And then Persia appeared on the scene. Persia, which Sparta had defeated at Plataea. Persia, from which Sparta had saved Greece. Now the Persian king supplied Sparta with gold to build a fleet. Sparta, which barely 80 years before had been dying for the freedom of Hellas, now waged war with Persian money against other Greeks. This is rather like a temperance campaigner opening a late-night bar with money from a vodka magnate. Principles? They were devoured by geopolitics. The command of the fleet was given to Lysander. He was not of royal birth, which in itself broke with tradition, but he was talented, cunning, merciless. In 405, he destroyed the Athenian fleet at Aegospotami, effectively annihilated it, and a year later, Athens capitulated. Sparta dictated the terms: tear down the long walls, surrender the remnants of the fleet, dissolve the alliance. Democracy was overthrown. A collaborationist government was installed, the 30 tyrants, who launched a reign of bloody terror. Thousands were executed. Sparta, the liberator of Hellas, watched this and said nothing. But here is the interesting thing. Sparta is magnificent in war. Governing, it cannot do it all. The Spartan harmosts, military governors sent to administer the former Athenian domains, behaved like occupiers. They plundered, violated, terrorized the population. In less than a year, Athens rose up and overthrew the tyrants itself. Sparta could not even hold what it had conquered. Democracy had to be restored. The only thing Sparta taught Athens during its period of dominance was that Spartan rule was far worse than Athenian. And yet another poison began eating away at the Lycurgan system from within: Persian gold. Money flowed into Sparta in torrents. The prohibition on gold and silver was never formally repealed. But how do you enforce it when your Admiral Lysander returns from campaign with chests of spoils? Corruption, personal enrichment, envy, everything that Lycurgus had wished to shield his citizens from, entered Spartan life and never left. Conqueror of Greece, hegemon of the world. It would seem finished, done. But it is precisely now that the time bomb we spoke of at the beginning went off. The year 371 BC Boeotia, the field of Leuctra. The Spartan phalanx, that same invincible one, advances in its customary formation. Opposite it stand the Thebans under the command of a lame, unremarkable man named Epaminondas. He did something unexpected. He deepened the left wing to 50 ranks instead of the usual 8. Such a battering ram simply could not fail to break a standard battle line. Phalanx crashes into phalanx, and the invincible one shatters. King Cleombrotus and 700 Spartiates remain on the field, 700 out of approximately 1,000 remaining enfranchised citizens. Nearly the entire warrior caste wiped out in a single day. And then things grew worse. Epaminondas invaded Laconia. For the first time in 400 years, an enemy army stands in the valley of the Eurotas and looks upon Sparta itself, a city without walls. And what happens? In panic, helots are freed. Freedom is promised to anyone who will take up arms. A defense is hastily mounted. But Epaminondas does not assault the city. He marches on and liberates Messenia. The helots gain their freedom, reconstitute their state. Sparta loses half its land, its economic foundation, and its chief source of dread, though now it is Sparta that must live in fear, not the Thebans. Let us simply look at the numbers. Under Lycurgus, 9,000 Spartiates. By the start of the Peloponnesian War, around 3,000. By Leuctra, 700. And this was not caused by epidemics. The system consumed itself. Land concentrated in the hands of the wealthy. The poor, who could not contribute their share to the Syssitia, lost their citizenship. From equals, the Spartiates became a handful of oligarchs. The Lycurgan order, conceived to preserve a caste, annihilated that very caste. Reform-minded kings appeared. Agis IV tried to reset everything, redistribute land, cancel debts, revive the old customs. The ephors, bribed by the wealthy, arrested and executed him. For the first time in Spartan history, their own king was put to death for attempting to restore the law. Cleomenes III, on coming to power, staged a coup d'etat, destroyed the College of Ephors, revived the Agoge and the Syssitia. For a brief time, the military power returned, but Antigonus of Macedon defeated him at Silesia in 222 BC. Enemies broke into Sparta for the first time, looting its streets. Sparta became a pawn in the great political game. Then came Rome. By 146 BC, Greece had become the province of Achaia, and Sparta turned into a museum, literally. Roman tourists came to watch the Agoge, to see the flogging of youths at the altar of Artemis. By then, it was theater. Tickets, souvenirs, the glory of ancestors, a city that had become a monument to itself. The Goths sacked Sparta in the 2nd century AD. The city never recovered. With the coming of Christianity, the pagan temples were destroyed. In the Middle Ages, the site was a small settlement, no larger than a big village. In 1834, the Greek government founded the modern city of Sparta a few kilometers from the ancient ruins. Archaeologists began excavations and found almost nothing. Because the Spartans did not build in stone, because they disdained gold. Of the greatest military power of the ancient world, there remain only meager foundations and shattered inscriptions. Remember the 4 riddles I posed at the beginning. Is it true that the Spartans were invincible? As you can see, they were beaten. The Thebans beat them at Leuctra, the Macedonians beat them, the Romans beat them. Invincibility was a myth, but a myth so powerful it worked even after death. Why did a state that banned gold get bought? It was bought by Persian money, by luxury, by the lure of power. Prohibition bred hunger, hunger bred betrayal. What system of upbringing destroyed Sparta? The very one that made boys into warriors. It reduced the number of citizens to a critical mass. When there's almost no one left to send to war, no amount of valor will save you. And how did the absence of walls finish Sparta off? It kept it in fear and isolation. And when the enemy finally came, fear turned to paralysis. Sparta could not expand, could not reinvent itself, could not admit new people. Walls built of courage proved less reliable than walls built of stone. The system that forbade change could not change. The Spartans despised wealth and became impoverished. They extolled equality and created one of the most brutal inequalities in history. They sang of freedom and built total control over every step of life. They wanted immortal glory and received it. But at what price? The word Spartan exists in every language, yet of Sparta itself, only legends remain, and a few broken stones, and an epitaph at Thermopylae. Go, tell the Spartans, stranger passing by, that here, obedient to their laws, we lie. They truly kept to their laws, laws that killed them, and so fear built the greatest war machine, and pride, the inability to change, ground it into dust. An irony of history worth remembering every time we say, with respect, the words Spartan conditions. Spartan conditions are not only about endurance, they are about the fact that any system that has forbidden itself to evolve will inevitably become a museum to which tourists come and leave, having paid for their ticket, in iron coins that no one will accept anywhere else.